Welcome everyone to another episode of Coral Living. Tonight we continue through Spiral Dynamics. We have now arrived at stage green. And if it isn't obvious, the things that we're wearing kind of talk or speak towards stage green Spiral Dynamics. Now you might be unaware of this, but as we've been going through Spiral Dynamics, whether you're aware of it or not, we've been moving uphill. We've been climbing a mountain. And what we've been doing while we've been climbing that mountain is we've been expanding our consciousness, our awareness, but we've also been doing something else. If you're going through the spiral and you've made it to stage orange, you've been creating for yourself a giant ego. This whole time, whether you're aware of it or not, you've been creating for yourself a distinction between self and other.
And love will steer the stars. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. The age of Aquarius. Ooh. Harmony and understanding. Mystic crystal revelations.
So, now that you've made it to the top of the mountain, now the only place to look is down. And you know what they say about, when you're climbing a mountain, be careful, do not look down, because going down the hill might be the scariest part. Might be the deconstruction of the ego, a returning to that beige state, but with some type of maybe greater awareness. What do you got there? Your scented incense. Making some incense for us tonight. Okay, that's good. Now, stage green, Justin. What stands out to you as the essence of stage green?
Okay. Well, it's we just finished orange, which was very rational. And a fascinating thing about green to me is the fact that it's actually higher than orange. That's really hard for orange and under to grasp, is that this very hippie-ish stage is the highest on the first tier. Because after green comes the second tier, which is yellow.
Yeah.
And it's a whole nother can of worms. But within the first tier, it's the highest level. But orange, being very rational, green is very intuitively oriented. It's very emotional. And there's a lot to do with feelings and heart. And that is an interesting caveat to me, is the fact that I think there's going to be a lot of people watching that struggle with that. Because there's a lot of things that seem really kind of sappy about green. Yeah. Sort of emotional, and maybe can be perceived by the other very masculine, in a sense, other stages. It seems very effeminate.
Yeah. And so, one thing you said in the last episode that really spoke out to me, I was like, that was like a solid point, was that one of the reasons why green can maybe look very ugly, and we'll go through some of the pros and the cons like we normally do, but one of the hard things people have with stage green is that there's not a ton of it out there yet. Like, it's just blossoming. If you look at the creators of Spiral Dynamics
in the 60s,
yeah,
it was everywhere, right? Like
it began in the 60s. That was like the first,
right? But there was an explosion of it that was sort of squelched by the whole like Reagan era and all that and stuff. Seemed to come along and like the war on drugs, all this stuff.
The world wasn't ready for it yet,
right?
It was kind of just discovering itself, and it seems like there's a bit of a reawakening to it, but it's not the same. What you're actually, I think, one good point when trying to understand stage green, or just anything about Spiral Dynamics, is that it's necessary to properly integrate all the stages as you're going and not bypass anything, because if you do, you're going to have to go back and go through some of the learning processes that help you get to green. Now, one of the problems with green is that it comes out of orange, but it misses a lot of the valuable lessons from blue, red, purple. It misses a lot of that, those important lessons. And in the earlier unhealthy stages of green, there's a lot of ugliness there. But let's go back to some of the finer points about green, which some of you had already mentioned. Stage green is all about equality, love, peace, sexual liberation, and again, that pendulum is swinging back from self to community.
Right. Orange was self-oriented, and green is communal, community-based.
Yeah.
Oriented.
And stage green is also about flattening hierarchies. It doesn't like it doesn't like the capitalistic, like it wants a softening of that. Not to completely annihilate it, which sometimes stage blue and orange get up in arms about. They think that stage green, because it fights so hard against stage blue and orange, that it's trying to squash the establishment. But that's not what it's trying to do. It's trying to bring balance to some of the recklessness that comes along with blue and orange. And so there's this tug of war going on between blue, orange, and green. Now, any other benefits do you think, or major components of green, do you think that are left out?
Major components? No. I think you addressed.
Well, it's also, I think one big one is that it comes back to spirituality.
Right. There's a return to spirituality, and it's not a conservative blue type spirituality. It's more interested in something probably like Buddhism or Eastern mysticism and New Age type spirituality.
Yeah, it's very it broadens.
Although there could be maybe some hippie green.
There are hippie churches. There are they would probably be called non-denominational churches and stuff like that.
The Baha'i faith would probably be a good example because they're inclusive, I believe, of a variety of.
And that's one of the things about green is very inclusive. It wants equality, and it expands its sense of other from. Whereas in stage blue is more about its nation, its people, its religious groups. Now it reaches out towards the world, and it sees the whole world as one people.
Yeah.
That
very empathetic, very concerned with the disenfranchised. It very socially conscious, social justice warrior-y. And environmentally concerned. It cares about, it's not just humans, It cares about animals, it cares about, it's going to be concerned with the ecosystem and the planet.
Greenpeace, PETA.
Right. It didn't discard the aspect of orange that is self-development. It cares about growing itself as a person.
But as a community. But it really enjoys growing as a community, where orange was all about building oneself up.
Yeah.
Now, green's saying, let's all get on board.
Orange was, it's all about me. Green is, it's all about we. It's let's raise all of ourselves up.
Yeah.
But it seems to, from what I've looked into about it, that there is a very superficial nature to its spirituality. It's not it would get taken up with likely a green person would be interested in the fad or the trend of something like yoga. It wouldn't be overly fixated likely on the deep spiritual connotations of practicing Kriya Yoga or something like that. But it would probably want to go to a group of people doing that.
Yeah. It
Drum circles.
Values connecting with others. It sometimes over romanticizes stage purple.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like getting back to nature and
tribal.
And you know, taking your shoes and your socks off and putting your feet in the grass and you know getting in touch with nature. Apparently, you know, like there's like New Age is like classic, very stage green, Reiki, meditation retreats.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the woods. You know, what do they call it? Like trust falls with your friends.
Yeah.
Very stage green. You know, men crying.
Yeah. Men reciting poetry in the park. Bearded men.
Bearded, long-haired hippie men.
Yeah. Hey man, honestly, I was looking forward to green. Because I really like green. I like the fact that it's got a lot of heart in it. You know, in a cynical, icy world, green is it's a breath of fresh air. It's back to human connection. It's about hugging each other and you know, being a group and trying to put past people's differences, which is kind of a bad thing for it too, because green gets this almost naive, wimpy, sappy nature to it that is very easy to walk all over.
Oh yeah, it gets picked apart, made fun of 24/7.
Yeah.
You go on
granola.
Yeah. You like, and this is where you know you kind of get into some of the like the uglier side of green. I don't know if I want to go there right away because I just want to make sure that we get all the good out there, because there's a lot of good in green. The essence of green is very good. When you get a really strong, healthy green person, as an example, although there's not very many of them, there's getting more and more. But when you see a strong, healthy green person, you can go, that person's well developed. They're usually already, when you can say that about green, they're usually already transitioning into yellow.
Yeah. Well, there's probably a lot of fake green people. There's probably a lot of people that are more interested in virtue signaling, and they're still orange, but they're placating as green. There's probably a bit of that, you know. But the thing is, for some people, they're not going to understand this. They're going to think it's all bullcrap. But the truth is, real green actually cares about these things. Like if you're starting to cultivate and develop empathy, and you actually do care about you know, equality and these sort of things, you're going into green. You're like, you know what I mean? And it's a weird thing. It's probably has to do with the heart chakra opening up.
Yeah, well, there seems to be some type of like your empathy, compassion gene. There's something that ignites within you. There seems to be like a quantum leap, like in the person that breaks them. They just, if you find yourself crying, you know, a lot, you know, maybe you're starting to break into green, not because you're sad, but just because you start feeling the emotion of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always sad. It could just be happy crying.
Well, think of how difficult that is. Like, I don't know that that's been given much attention, is the existential crisis that is when somebody transitions from one stage that they've always been into a new stage. Now, with blue, that could be literally discarding a faith you've had your whole life, or changing your views that you've had when you've been involved with the military complex your whole life. So when you're going from orange, where you've been fairly icy, likely, and all of a sudden you're developing all these feelings, and you're like, "What? Good God, why do I care about this stuff?" You know, like maybe you took a trip to a butcher factory, and you were like, "Good Lord," you know. factory farming has turned something on in my head.
Or you traveled to a third world country and you saw,
Right.
you saw the way other people live,
Right.
and something cracked in you.
Right, and there's more opportunity for people to actually go from orange to green nowadays because everybody's got the internet, so you can see videos of starving kids, and it's not that hard to research a little bit about factory farming or whatever, some animal that's getting stuck in 6-pack rings or got a straw stuck in its face. Some people are still not going to care about that. Some people are still gonna they're not going to be able to have any feelings about that. But with green is, I think that involved with green is the introduction often of psychedelics. And I've mentioned it before.
Yeah.
But psychedelics, for those, do your own research out there. But the idea is that psychedelics can oftentimes expand your consciousness to a degree. And so that might lead people a little bit more into just an awakening of sorts to some of
helping you to see something that you weren't
right.
able to see.
You may feel a connection all of a sudden with things you prior did not have a connection with.
I know lots of people. They've been to like parties with some pretty reasonable people. They've taken mushrooms before, and then they've been like, all of a sudden, their conservative buddy is now like putting their arm around you and being like, "Isn't it all beautiful, man?"
Yeah.
Like, and then
that's some
they like
MDMA, Molly.
as soon as it wears off, they go back to their like pussy.
I've seen it before. I have a friend, and I won't say any names, but when I was a teenager, we were at a party, and he's a very conservative guy, and let's just say something was going around, and I found him with a group of people he never would have been with, and he's like, "These are my people," and then sure enough, the next morning it was like, "Oh my God, what was I on?" He snapped back to the other world, but it's a glimpse. It's a glimpse into how things could be, And
I think it freaks people out.
Oh, for sure.
Stage orange
weirds them out. We're weirding people out right now.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Just by being dressed like this, it's bothersome.
If you find yourself resisting hugs, you're probably still in stage orange.
Just
like,
cringiness. There you go. Cringiness is an aspect.
Yeah, like sex in orange is more about getting off, and in stage green, it's more about building an intimate connection.
It's a spiritual endeavor, and that's the other thing about it is open discussion about sex. Blue, nobody's talking about sex very much in blue. In orange, it would be approached from a crude, vulgar place, a lot of jokes and stuff like that. But with green, it's like you're going to sex therapy in a group. You know what I mean? So it's way more open about sexuality. It's way more accepting of varied versions of sexuality. Yeah. And all of this stuff for somebody that's orange or blue is gonna be bothersome. They're gonna be like, that sounds perverted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't sound like a growth.
I get it.
But keep in mind, this whole model was developed by clinical psychologist people, and it's based on data sets that were acquired, both on individuals and with historical cultural reference. So it's based on what has been observed, which is why the stages only go so high, and then you can't really talk about them. You know, but this point has been observed and recognized in both culture and individuals that they often, through the progression of the other stages, end up here. So if you're weirded out by it, remember, that's where you're headed.
Can't escape it. No. Well, you know what you could. You can stay. You can stay in your stage, and there's nothing wrong with. You could stay in your stage.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe in the next life. I don't know.
Yeah, you can still be effective and be stuck at whatever.
Go the rest of your days, and like a lot of things need to happen for green to even be possible. Green can't even be possible without going through blue and orange. There's no green without orange. It has to learn.
Well, see, that is an interesting thing because I'm curious about this. One of the caveats of green being able to emerge is that they've covered things like blue and orange, meaning, okay, to be orange, you have to be kind of coming from an opulent culture.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got enough, your needs are met, you've eaten, you've got a warm roof over your head, you've got love, you've got all these other things that are, part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or whatever the heck it's called. You've covered all those bases. So now when you've got people being born into an existing, not red stage, not purple stage, but they're being born into more of like a blue, orange, green world, they may be quicker to become that way. But I think it's dysfunctional if it's rushed, right? Which is where you could which is the concern, I think, of blue and orange when they see somebody that's like an avid social justice warrior person that's got like a cockeyed view of the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, this, I think, goes back to what I was starting to say in the beginning. I feel like now we can start to extrapolate and pull out of what I was.
We've given enough examples.
What I was saying, because what you bring up is a good point. Like I think you can kind of like rush through stages or even maybe bypass them, but eventually I feel like sometimes like you got to go back and kind of like work through,
integrate. You have to
integrate some of it. One of the problems we got right now, like if what we're talking about is grossing you out, it more than likely comes from the fact that there is a lot of unhealthy green right now that has to go back, fix itself, and come back. And a proper because here's the thing, some of the negative sides of green are that sometimes they're I want to say like over optimistic, but that doesn't sound right. They're
naive.
Yeah,
and over optimistic is probably
or too utopian.
Yes.
They have this ideal setting in their brain. Idealistic. You got to understand that you're working. It's like a child coming on board with like newfound emotions that they haven't learned to control.
And not to mention, green is not aware of the spiral. So what happens is green doesn't understand. Green is just as bothered and disgusted by orange and blue and red.
Yeah.
So green is looking at them being like, why can't we all just get along? And they're like, no, we can't all get along. And in fact, I'm gonna beat you up. You know what I mean? It doesn't understand that these other stages are absolutely needed. And exist and are pertinent. It's just as frustrated with what it perceives to be negative aspects of the world.
So back to my point, what I'm trying to say there is that like it's idealistic. It's got this idea of how the world should be. It sees the problems with orange and blue because they're usually predominantly surrounded by them. That's what they're in the mix with. So they see the problems with orange and blue. They have a bleeding heart, and they want to save them and bring them back. But they make because they don't know how to control they haven't learned to deal with their emotions properly yet. Because like some of them have just come online and they haven't learned the lessons from blue and orange. They start making insane policies, they have insane solutions. Well, it's like, okay, this group of people saying mean things, so let's make a law that makes it so people can't speak mean things.
Right. Oh, okay, but here's the thing. And I heard somebody else make this really good point too. The fear of blue and orange is that they confuse green with Marxism. They think that it's that neo-Marxist Soviet crap, which is communism.
Yeah.
They're communal, but they're not necessarily communistic. They're not approaching it with the same attitude. Yes, they want equality and everything like that, and to sort of level the playing field, but I don't think it's that same... I don't think you need to be fearful of green in the same way that you would have... Like the communism that rose out of
Well, okay. Now I hear what you're saying, and we might disagree a little bit. I actually have a feeling that like green can make devastating, some devastating problems for blue and orange.
Right.
That's why they fight. They fight so hard with each other. Uh, I actually think green can be so naive that it makes such stupid, compelling like when they're in power, they make some really awful decisions that might take like a whole decades to unravel.
It could be, but I think what you're leaving out of the fact is that green, this version of it, this isn't purple. This is high green. So if you're not a faker or a poser, you're not like because what you have out in the world there too is people that could be stage red. They could be at the bottom, but because culture has evolved, they're taking on a leftist persona, creating an ideology out of it, and now approaching it with that either red or blue attitude.
Yeah.
A true person that has actually grown into green through the other stages and has actually got to green is going to be more aware. You're not giving them enough credit for.
I hear what you're saying. I would say yes, you're right. The people that I think that I see as possibly being real shit disturbers are the ones that grew up in an orange affluent home and then start immediately bitching and complaining through their indoctrination camps that they grew up through college.
They're immature. They're an immature version of it.
Yeah.
And I'm not fully integrated version.
And it's hard to not talk about this and not bring up JP Jordan Peterson, because if you really want to understand what Jordan Peterson is, in my opinion, Jordan Peterson is the guy seeing this with. I don't even know if he's even aware of spiral dynamics. Probably is, but I see him as being, oh my God, like you first learn how to clean your damn bedroom before you
try to save the world.
Yeah, like you guys are going out there and you're trying to save the world, and you've done nothing yet with your lives. You guys are disastrous.
Which is not wrong. I don't disagree with that. I think for a lot of people, the answer for them isn't taking a bunch of psychedelics and forcing themselves to be what they think green is.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, what they really do need is to probably listen to Jordan Peterson and clean their damn room or whatever he says. No, like, here's the thing. We're kind of dressed up. We're being kind of silly or whatever with how we're dressed. It's a visual representation. If you start finding yourself going the way of green, doesn't mean you have to wear tie-dye and go to Coachella and Burning Man. Those things are green things, like Burning Man music festivals, all that stuff. Those are green characteristics.
Woodstock.
But spiral dynamics is just a model. It's just a model, and I'm sure it can't account for everything.
Yeah.
But what you're supposed to be doing here is taking into account the big picture of what we're saying and pointing at something that's in reference to this model.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But that is Jordan Peterson's thing, right? Is because think of green, they are kind of trying to save the world. They do have this hopeful, optimistic attitude that they can write all these things, but they're not as disciplined as they should have been.
That's a huge thing with lacking discipline. They love to get around and talk and party, and
their heart is bigger than their brain sometimes.
Yes.
So what can happen is they'll see something, and instead of understanding why it's occurring, they'll just identify with the negative feelings. They'll be like, and so they scramble to try to fix things without regarding the rest of the system that's creating that particular issue that they have, right?
Yeah.
Even a boring way to say that. I don't know.
No, I think I think it's a good point. So what I would say is like the unhealthier side of green. I think it's good to go. If you find yourself there, take a step back. Stop being so judgmental. But every side, this is the problem with every side in tier 1, is that they're all judging the other one. Like, if you're in stage blue and stage orange, you need to pull yourself up and go hang out with some of these people in stage green. Go to some of these music festivals. Start being with these people.
Okay, so you're talking about if you're interested,
Yeah.
and in maybe you've heard this, and maybe you're a Stage Orange person, and you're like, well, I don't really, like, how am I supposed to go, if I really am supposed to become one of these granola eating hippies, where do I start? And what you're suggesting is that maybe go to a music festival, maybe go to a drum circle, maybe join a yoga class.
Yeah.
Read some green literature. I mean, do a deep dive about the 1960s on the internet, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Go see what was going on there. You're gonna find that they were psychedelics were exploding. I hate to.
Yeah.
I'm not an advocate necessarily of anything like that, but it seems to be an aspect here, and people that they've got their needs met. And so what's happened is they actually have time now to concern themselves with other people. The world has become more integrated, and we've become more of a melting pot of a society. So you're also bringing in people from different cultures into your circle,
Yeah.
and adopting maybe some of what their perspectives on life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think if you're in green and you find yourself hating, orange and blue, take some time to pull yourself out of your hippie commune and go try and listen to some of what people in blue and orange are saying. I know a lot of I don't know, but I've seen liberals and stuff like that who have hated on Jordan Peterson just because they went through their university and they were told that he was an evil man with no progression in him whatsoever, and stay away from that. And then they ended up starting podcasts and then had him on, and they were like, we were so wrong about you. We were like, and even Jordan Peterson himself, I think Jordan Peterson I think his thing is that he's actually more yellowy. When we get into yellow, I think he actually has a lot of yellow in him, but he kind of bypassed green, and he's actually going through green right now. Go watch some Jordan Peterson podcasts over the last year. I think he cries, like 1 in 3. Mm-hmm. You can tell that something's happening to him.
Well, here's a theory. It almost seems like at some point Jordan Peterson was, because he had maybe denied green because of his tendencies towards blue and orange, maybe there was a bit of a shadow self going on with green. Like maybe he had some resentment towards green ideals, and he was almost like resisting that and demonizing that and fearful of that. And then due to maybe some of the medical issues he's gone through or something like that, his heart has opened up a little bit. He's softened to a degree.
And my buddies who were Stage Blue are like, I don't even know about him anymore. Fuck Jordan Peterson.
No. But here's the thing, man. He's also become more straight up religious, though. He speaks more about Christianity and his belief in that way more openly than he used to.
Yeah.
But you're right, he is kind of more emotional.
I see. And it might be some green version of Christianity. I don't really know. I don't listen all the time, but he's a complex figure, Jordan Peterson. He does still. He's got a worry in him that Stage Green is going to become some Marxist. He still has a bit of that. I even heard something recently. He still uses the term neo-Marxists. His worry is that communism is going to come back again and take over,
which is a concern, but I think that has to do more with. I honestly think that is not a true sign of somebody that has, in a healthy manner, grown to the level of green. It's more like somebody that's been shown green ideals and commandeered those ideals with behind the scenes they're actually blue and red. They're actually more stuck in those stages, and they're just with the facade of green.
So why don't we talk a little bit about the manipulation of stage green, and then maybe talk about some good examples of stage green.
Sure.
Green is easily manipulated. It's one of its weaknesses in the unhealthier side of green. It because it wants good so bad, it will follow like a lemming off of a cliff.
Right.
Stage orange, who's like, fuck yeah, we'll tell them anything they want to hear. Come on, green. And green's like, all right, let's do it. This is one of the things that drives people absolutely nuts. Like,
right. If you're gonna be one of the people that drinks the Kool-Aid if you're green. You're not gonna be the cult leader, likely.
Yeah. But like now I think we can open up into like the political realm and talk about like what's really going on in running the world. Is that like everyone who like in Western countries right now, the people that are running the show, these are bright orange people. They're not as like they can skew. Like, they can skew to the green spectrum or to the blue spectrum. Like, Donald Trump is bright orange, but he feeds he feeds off of stage blue. He's a nationalist. He's big on America, make America great again. Its people. And so they're all like, fuck yeah. He's the guy who's probably never read the Bible a day in his life, who makes a cameo and stands out front of a burnt church. The Bible holds it like so awkwardly, like, and all the stage blue people are like, yeah, Jesus is president.
Right.
I'm like, you're off your fucking rocker.
Yeah.
Like he's about money, but you're kidding yourself if you think that Joe Biden or Justin Trudeau aren't all about the money, the Benjamins, rolling in their private jets to Greenpeace meetings across the world with 20 cars of agents behind them. Like, you guys are full, like, open your eyes, man. Like, Justin Trudeau, 10 times blackface? 10 times blackface. How many times? Can't even remember. Doesn't even know.
I just know about the one time.
He's like, the guy's been caught, I think it's 3 times. But I'm exaggerating. But come on, man. This guy's ridiculous. The guy who starts charities and gives his family it's $500,000 and then pays no consequence whatsoever.
All right, you're going on a Justin Trudeau rant.
I know. I hit Trump. These guys are orange characters who play off of blue and green. Justin Trudeau plays to green.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the unhealthy green buy into some of this ridiculous liberalism, unhealthy stuff, like hook, line, and sinker. They buy into it, while and the manipulation that goes on in the background. I understand why guys like Jordan Peterson. You sent me a video on the bills that they're passing to shut us all up.
Mm-hmm. Which is a scary thing, yeah.
The
bills are designed. They're designed like this, where on the surface, most moral people are gonna think, yeah, I'm like they're represented like bills that are just there to try to get rid of racism. That's good. Nobody wants to be racist, right?
Yeah.
Right. Except for the bills infringe on free speech, which is you don't want to do that. Essentially.
Yeah, you can't question anything, and if you want to be in a place that teaches other people, you gotta bow down and say that you believe everything that we believe. Mm-hmm. This is how hardcore some of these bills. They want to censor YouTube. They want to make it so that you can't see stuff on YouTube.
Let's stay on point, though.
But anyway, my point is that some of these negative progressive bills. That come from some of the unhealthier parts of stage green. I heard someone say something really good this week. They said, never vote for a law that you wouldn't want your enemy to have the power with. Does that make sense? So say green, it's sometimes I feel like green is naive in the fact that they were well, not all of them, you shouldn't be allowed to say anything you want. Let's shut down Well, there's a cost to that, right? There's a cost to not being able to say.
But here's the thing. Here's my gripe with what you're saying.
Yeah.
all these laws, let's be real about it, they're leftist. If we're talking right versus left, conservative versus liberal, these laws are reek of liberalism and leftism.
Yeah.
Right? But liberalism and leftism isn't necessarily coming from a really green place.
Yes. Yeah.
There's somebody that's orange that is, like you said, looking at the cultural shift. People are like, look, we accept other cultures. We've grown. We don't demonize your sexual orientation. And they're like, so orange political people have seen the cultural shift, and they're doing their orange deeds with those things.
Yeah.
So, like, simple as that, right?
What I see in this is that orange is playing towards green, saying, okay, we'll create all these laws and green, because green's naive and says, yeah, that will make people's feelings, them not hurt other people's feelings. They don't understand that if that law was reversed and put back on them, would you want that? Sorry, Green, you're not allowed to talk anymore.
Here's the thing.
Only imagine if only the other side could talk.
I gotta say something here. It's gotta be made clear of something.
Yeah.
All right. Green is not stupid. It does have an issue with prioritizing. I think this is an issue that it has, and this can be the ugly side of green. It has an issue prioritizing feelings and emotions over rationality and like it could use to remember some of the more harsher versions of compassion. It's not always just comforting. Sometimes compassion can be a good slap across the face. I'm not advocating anybody slapping anyone. But as an example of that, Will Smith assaulted Chris Rock recently on the Oscars, and it seems like a lefty liberal thing to almost justify him, like he's a good man doing that. It's like at the end of the day, it's assault. It doesn't matter how you feel about it or if you can empathize with him defending his wife. That's assault, brother. So you gotta pay the piper for that.
Don't get me started on that.
So the thing is this: green people are likely educated because they're not pulling this stuff from nowhere. They've gotten some education when it comes to injustices in the world. But in order to go from green and talking into yellow, which is after green, it's the next one.
Yeah.
They could use more discipline. They could go back and reintegrate a little bit more of that orange and blue discipline because they need to be more educated. They need to go deeper with some of the things they care about and understand the bigger picture of things. Not be so swept away with their feelings. It's exciting when you go into a new stage. There's always this element of freedom or discovery, but they gotta remember that they have to cultivate discipline.
Yeah. Right? Okay, well, to spin right into like the next part, before I get it, I think you made me recall something, is that I think stage green can get really like a community with pitchforks sometimes for what they deem a righteous cause.
Protesting, that's a green thing.
Yeah, protesting go get them. I think you start to see the healthier side of green start to emerge out of that when they start to be not so afraid to be like, okay, I see what you're saying, and there's some truth and validity to what you're saying, but I think you're going a little too far with what you're doing. And what happens is because green can get really cult-likey, you get like, if you say anything against the collective, that collective, it takes it really personal, and it's like you're out of the club.
Right. But I think that has to do with the fact that they're so darn emotional, right? Like we one of our friends' parents, who was very liberal leaning, very left leaning, kicked you out of her house because you had a differing political attitude about things. right? Or
Yeah,
you
yeah.
suggested something
Yeah.
different politically, and it was during an intense time. It was during the Bush administration.
For sure, right?
And she wanted to essentially demonize Bush, that's it. And I can't remember what you suggested.
I said I'd vote for him again if I was American.
Right. And she kicked you right out of the house.
Yeah.
And you were like, hey, I just brought you groceries or whatever. I don't know.
I don't know what the heck
Maybe,
is
I don't
going
know
on.
if that what you did, but it was out. And so, yeah, I think Green can be a little bit caught up in its feelings and lack.
So here's the thing. I think no. Sorry, did I?
No, go ahead.
What I wanted to like get out of is that some of the healthier sides of Green are like you might have a hard time even recognizing them as Green because they've done such a good job of integrating the other steps now that they're into the greenness. Now, when I think of like a healthy Green, I would say someone like Joe Rogan would be a healthy Green, high Green.
Yeah.
Possibly even moving into yellow. Russell Brand to me seems like a healthy Green.
Yeah. To me, Terrence McKenna was pretty darn green. I know somebody else plotted him more turquoise, but he seemed to be a lot of green.
Yeah. Like people who are in the stage orange, unhealthy green spectrum, they're because Joe Rogan doesn't necessarily agree with absolutely everything that like the main green zone believes in.
Right.
He gets ostracized. Same with someone like Russell Brand.
People plot Joe Rogan as
blue, which is hilarious.
Well, as conservative
Yeah.
and right wing.
This is what if stage like the orange, unhealthy green, anything that doesn't like fall in line with them is radical right wing.
Yeah.
You're radical.
Yeah.
If you don't believe in the orange green cause, you're radical right and you're racist.
Well,
you're a racist, a misogynist, an anti-vaxxer, and you're like
it can be, but you're painting green a little bit like
just the one side.
I know, but the thing is, you're painting green a little bit almost like a cult. Like you can associate green with cults. No, cults is a blue thing. Cults is that like I would die for my like. It's all about the cause. It's all about whatever the collective is believed to a religious degree.
I don't want to
Green is not necessarily like that. Green is communal, but I don't know that it's got
It's
that.
not collectivist. But it not cult like man. That's a
Not
bad.
cult-like,
That's not a. But they get in their collective, their group, and like they're very open to many causes. But like if you question it, but they're all groups are like that. Blues like that, oranges like that, greens like that. If you question like the main narrative that each one's pushing, if you like ask a question, it's like okay, we're just gonna move you over here and shh. I feel like
I don't know because I think green has a level of open-mindedness to it that the other ones don't. I mean, that's literally what disturbs blue and orange about green is how open green is.
Yes, I think green is more open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit more.
Here's what you could say. You could actually say that one of the possible negative sides of green is that they might be overly open. They might be too quick to embrace people that they don't know enough about because they've got such a bleeding heart.
Yeah.
Like they mightn't bring somebody into their flock that's not good.
Yeah.
They don't have that discernment that blue and orange might have to say like that's not. We shouldn't be mixing. Well, no, not that, but I don't know. It just seems like it could possibly be a weakness or a downside to green is the lack of discernment about who would be a good
I think
addition.
there's a lot of good. Don't get me wrong. I think like there's a lot of good in green. I think the only problem with green is that, like you said before, it's not well traveled yet. so we haven't gotten to see the beauty of green
Right.
flourish yet.
Right. There's only green is new, so it's not a well beaten path. There's been blue for centuries,
Yeah.
and there's been orange for a long time too.
A few hundred years.
Green is like
50 years.
green is emerging.
Yeah. Green,
So
yeah.
so it's
falling
it
in the
hasn't had the
potholes.
same it hasn't had the same amount of time that the other stages have had to reinforce themselves.
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to do by like pointing out some of these negative attributes is that as green starts to evolve, it's going to start learning some of these lessons. I think a lot of green people could use to learn to people like Russell Brand and Joe Rogan, who are unafraid. These are people who are super open-minded. Like Joe Rogan he has people from every walk of life possible, every possible disagreeer that could be with him on his show, and he's so good at just talking and seeing everyone's perspective.
Which makes him kind of yellowish, to be honest.
Well, it's bringing him into yellow. The thing that kind of keeps you. So I guess this could be a good sign. Like, what transitions you into yellow? Because green is such a free stage. It spends a lot of its time. It's like a rest from orange. It's like orange was such a gong show of like go, capitalize and make and accomplish and do. Green seems to be a rest and a finding of oneself again.
Right. So there's an element of green that's almost hedonic. It's peace, love, and groovy, and a shift from the focus of orange being very success driven and competitive.
Yeah.
Whereas green is like, how do I enjoy my life? I want to find joy and connection with people. Pleasure seems to take a higher priority in green. Maybe not pleasure, but help me out.
Well, just getting all that life has to offer.
Right. Right. So it's not fixated on pure success driven as a priority. It's more interested in human connection.
Yes.
Yeah.
Big time. And bringing peace where it can. It sees problems in the world
And connection to nature and connection
Yeah.
to the metaphysical.
Yeah, it awakens to a lot of the corruption that's going on in the world today, and it's like, man, we can do better. We can do better, man. Like, look what's going on. How in 2020 do we still have sweat factories? Come on, man. And so, like, it's opening up.
I think when you were talking earlier about green and some of its cult-like thing, a good statement somebody said was, green is intolerant of intolerance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wants to tolerate everybody so much, but the biggest thing it can't tolerate is people not tolerating people. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, that won't go. You better tolerate everyone in here or else you're out, buddy. It's like, wait a sec. You know what I mean? You can't tolerate everybody. Like, so there's that to it, you know?
Well, and so where I was trying to get with all this is that, like, painting that picture of green, how it starts to emerge into yellow, is that now that after its period of rest and finding itself and doing all the things, it starts to realize that, like, okay, there's more significant work, I think, that needs to be done. And yeah, I can spend my days like Joe Rogan, like, hey, all I do is sit at a desk, talk to people, smoke weed, and chit chat.
Lift weights.
Like, yeah, eventually Joe Rogan one day will probably, if he goes into yellow, will wake up to, I think there's more that I could do with my life beyond.
That's why I would plot Joe Rogan more into the yellow than you did, because I think he spends a lot of time. I know that the people that are really close to him are constantly talking about how ridiculously generous he is. Like, he goes around trying to fix things, and I think he understands, because one of the elements of yellow is that they're very aware of systems. They're conscious of how systems work, and then they're effective at improving all those systems. And I think Joe Rogan's got a bit of that. You know what I mean? I think he allocates a certain amount of his money to things that he actually thinks is going to make the world a better place.
Yeah. He'll have like more complex variations. Like Russell Brand isn't there yet. He does comedy shows. He sits in front of YouTube and he does his shows. He's very green.
So here's the thing: if you want to go from green to yellow, it seems like there's a few things. One being the open-mindedness of green. You're actually, for yellow, going to go even more open-minded in some ways. But in other ways, you're going to give yourself more healthier boundaries. And two, is you're going to knuckle down even more on your stringent investigative research and self-autodidactic.
That's a big word.
You're going to work harder at educating yourself, and there's going to be more discipline leading you into yellow. But anyway, we'll talk about yellow.
Yeah. I think I think a big key for green to go into yellow is actually waking up to the spectrum of spiral dynamics in its own form. It doesn't have to be spiral dynamics. There's actually there's lots of other psychological development models that are relatively close to spiral dynamics. But waking up to this, to what's going on, seeing like green will wake up eventually and go, oh, blue. Like they won't call it blue, but they'll see. I see how they think, and they think. Like blue, green, orange, and green. And I can bring peace to that. I can help bring some type of unification and resolution to the battle that's going on with
I can
people.
fix the dysfunction found in each of these groups of people.
Yeah.
So right, yeah.
And it's like, and then it's like
they would know how to. A stage yellow person would likely, and they're very rare. There's not many of them around, right?
Yeah.
But a stage yellow person would know how to walk into a prison and make it a better environment to actually bring the inmates up. They would know how to walk into a hippie commune and fix that up, tighten that up so it's working better. And they would probably know how to walk into a business and know how to make the business both more profitable and more green friendly. You know what I mean? They would know how to cover all these things. That yellow is focused on helping everybody. We gotta stop talking about yellow.
Next week. I think we did a really good job on green. Holy crap, we talked a long time.
Yeah, I gotta get going.
That was good. I hope everyone that you guys liked this episode on Stage Green. There's so much. I told you the stages to get more complex as they go. Yeah. If you liked the episode, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, share with a friend. The notification bell lets you know whenever we release a new episode. And also check out the links in the description for all our stuff. And everybody, until next week, stay spiritual!